just going live now. We are good.
Great. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to call the meeting to order at 7:07. Sorry for the delay in getting started. Let me pull up the minutes for us to review. Larry, by the way, mentioned that he would not be able to join us tonight. He had a last-minute scheduling conflict, so we'll need to excuse him. It looks like we do have a quorum still. So let me go ahead and, Jay, would you mind giving me sharing permission?
Yes, 1 second.
Great.
Got it.
Thanks. Let's see here. Do we have? Let's see here. Is Joe? No, Joe's not on with us yet. Okay. These are the minutes from previous meeting. Start off with a brief discussion of hotspots, and then went through the initial results of the town survey. Speaking of which, this is for a future discussion, but probably schedule Brian and Marianne to take more time. They've completed their full analysis. We'll schedule another meeting to walk through that and record it, and then we'll chop it up and send it out to various different town departments. No update on the accessibility proposal, and I think it looks like we took most of the time. Any motions to correct or amend?
Am I listed as attending?
You are not listed as attending.
Yes, I brought that up to Larry. He said he had sent out a revised version that does have me listed.
Oh, did he? All right.
Yes.
Let me stop share and let's go off the revised. I was maybe going off the old one. Thank you for catching that, Will.
Well, if I didn't attend, then there was an awfully ugly guy who did. He's on the YouTube.
Let me reshare my screen. And all right, this looks a little bit better. I have Will on here. Any other motions to, well, that wasn't a motion, but any motions to amend or correct? Okay, I move that we accept the minutes of our 26th April meeting without amendments.
Second.
Second. All right, Angela, great. Let's go through. Will?
Aye.
And Angela?
Yes.
Likewise, I'm a yes. All right. Let me go ahead and stop share. Before we go on, I want to welcome Ryan to the committee. Ryan is ex officio from the schools, from my understanding. Ryan, welcome. I'd love to have you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am exactly that, ex officio from the schools. I took over as the IT tech director for Northborough, Southborough Public Schools in January of this year. It's been a wild ride, and I'm here to soak in and listen to what you guys are doing in Southborough. So I'm very interested to hear what goes on in these committees.
Awesome. Welcome.
And scene. Thank you.
So yeah, one of the goals of the committee is to find synergies between the town and the schools and IT, etc. Um, and we've brainstormed some ideas in the past about connectivity and so forth. But anyway, welcome. We'd also love to get, basically we meet monthly, and we'd love to hear about what's going on in the schools. Let me take a look at our current agenda for tonight. I think I don't have the schools on it, so um, we'll start to, I'll add an agenda item for future meetings, not tonight, but we'd love to get an update from you on how schools IT is going, what plans you have in place, and we can discuss if there's anything we can do between Southborough and the schools to either assist the schools. We have a lot of expertise on the committee, a lot of volunteer, very strong expertise, and we'd love to help out where possible. Okay, let's discuss next steps on ARPA-related projects. Do you want to cover that, Angela?
Sure. So I touched base with Tony, who is the gentleman who had reached out to discuss our ARPA template forms. And he's part of the committee that made the recommendations to the selectmen. They did recommend that the website upgrade was one of the ARPA funded projects. They make the recommendations, but ultimately it's the Board of Selectmen who will make the decision on which projects are funded. So the next step is we need to get confirmation from the Board of Selectmen, I guess, when they're going to make that decision and what that ultimately is. So I need to reach out to one of those folks. Yeah, I was probably going to talk to Sam and just ask him where it was in that process and when we could expect to maybe hear back from them. I believe they presented the recommendations the middle of last month. So hopefully we're not too far from hearing final word about approval.
Do we have a definition of what the upgrade would be?
In terms of
what additional functionality, look and feel, types of modules we would want?
A lot of that would come out in the discovery phase because we would still have to talk to users and build a requirements list. But we had some stuff that came out from the initial surveys that we did, people wanting the ability to have more collaborative features on the website, have the ability for easier subscription notifications. There was a desire to have it more under one roof so that, we didn't have to go to separate websites to get all of the data. And then I think there was an administrative component where like each group or each town could more easily update their section of the website.
I've been looking into Civic Plus and looking at what they offer and what their kind of modules they have and such, and also looking around at other towns. I actually looked at 6 or 7 different towns, and I sent links to those, all of which use Civic Plus, and they have there's every one of them looks different from what we have, and don't look nearly quite so drab. And also they do a lot with, for instance, with the recreation. They do a lot with social media. I think there's a lot there that we could explore in terms of, staying with them, but making a lot better use of what we do. And I'm not saying that we haven't made good use of it in the past, but it has been, let's say, it was not emphasized as part of Tom LaFlamme's job so much. He had a lot of other things to do, and Jason has a lot of things to do. If we are now going to begin to emphasize upgrading it, I think that's really the first place that we should be looking, because I think that sidesteps a lot of other issues, right? In terms of hosting, in terms of security, in terms of conversion from one vendor to another, and also perhaps would greatly simplify the process of putting together an RFP.
I don't think anybody's opposed to looking at Civic Plus first. I think this came up on the last call. I believe Mr. Lipp brought this up, that we should explore the existing vendor first and take a look at what they could offer.
Mhm.
If they have the capability and they have the capability to review the requirements, then I mean, it feels a lot easier than trying to migrate data and, you know, rebuild sites and stuff like that. So I think we definitely could start with them and see if that's an option.
Yeah, one area that they do a lot of work with, you know, apparently is recreation. And one thing we might actually look into is whether or not, you know, the recreation solution that's been selected is worth staying with, right?
I have a few comments on that. So before the town moved to my rec, I actually recommended to the rec department that they consider the Civic Plus rec module, and
Right.
they considered it and they evaluated it and they decided my rec was a lot better than the Civic Plus.
Okay.
So I mean, we can continue that discussion. I think, before we, pick and choose a technology and then figure out how we can use the technology, what I'd love to do is review, especially the feedback from the survey, and review like how do people want to interact with town? What is the art of the possible? And then let's based on sort of the goals or the art of what people would like to see, then we can take a step back and basically put together requirements. What are we looking for in the website? And then we can take a step back and see whether Civic Plus meets those needs. I agree that I completely agree with you with Will. We're not using a fraction of the functionality of Civic Plus, and as we discussed before, that's probably our initial
Matt, I
go-to.
would say we got some feedback from the survey, but I mean, it still feels like we need to talk to more people before, we actually say that the survey has given us all of the requirements. I think there's some more discovery work there to do. But Jay, I'd be curious about your views. How have they been as a vendor? Do you feel like we have a good account manager and somebody to talk to?
So, I was just going to chime in. I was waiting for you guys to, express your thoughts there. But when I had a brief moment to kind of dig around a little bit, I reached out to some other towns that I literally took some time to search other towns that were not using Civic Plus and see, what are they using? Who are they using? And all the way out to like the west coast of Massachusetts. And I found this one town. I forgot the name of the town. It was literally like the farthest west town of Massachusetts, and they were using a different module, a different website host. And I was like, okay, well, this looks really nice, and this and this and that. And I reached out to the IT manager and via email, and then he had a call with me, and he was like, listen, if you can stay with Civic Plus, stay with Civic Plus. We regret making the change to this new website. They have made so many different mistakes. They don't understand town workings. They don't understand, they present that they do understand how a town and city applications work with websites, because they're kind of a little bit, I don't want to say bigger, but they kind of made their stance in the West Coast, like California side. But he's like, if you can stick with Civic Plus, stick with Civic Plus. And then I reached out to another manager. Again, the same type of situation. They were like, Civic Plus was probably, we should have stuck with Civic Plus. It was a bad decision making this move. We thought that we were in a bad place, but then we're having really bad experiences with it, and members of the town are having different, bad experiences with it. And Civic Plus really does have a foothold here on the East Coast and on the West Coast as well. They are everywhere. Even here in Woonsocket, Civic Plus is our website for the city of Woonsocket. They do have different modules. They do have different ways for us to express our town in a sense and kind of put it out there. Obviously, no one has had the time to do that, including my predecessor, including myself, unfortunately, to really dig into what those needs are and how to change the look and make it look better for not only for the employees to make changes, but also for the residents to get in there. When it comes to an account manager, I had an account manager that I had a scheduled meeting 2 weeks ago to talk with them about some other items internally that people were trying to add different modules. And I scheduled an appointment. It was for 2 Wednesdays ago, well, about 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. And on Monday, I got an email from the woman saying, hey, I got to cancel on Wednesday. And then on Tuesday, no, she said she wanted to push it forward, but then on Tuesday, she said, hey, I just got promoted within Civic Plus, so we're going to be assigning you a new account manager. So just give us a couple of weeks to assign a new account manager. So I haven't heard anything yet on who my new account manager is, but I've actually pressed the issue last week as well with the person that was communicating with me. She CC'd someone within that email telling me that they were going to assign someone. And I pressed that issue last week saying, hey, is there someone yet? And they said that it should be coming very shortly. So
Hey, Jay, I was looking around. It looks like Hopkinton uses a firm called Revise, Revize.
Yeah.
I hadn't run into them anywhere else. The other observation I just make quickly is that, big cities like Boston and Springfield, I don't think they're using Civic Plus. I think they've rolled their own, or they're going with some other vendor in that case. But that's a case where they're much, much larger and they've got a lot more going on. So, different issue.
Yeah.
They probably have hired their own developers.
Perhaps, yes.
And I think it was actually revised. If I'm not mistaken, it was revised that that town I was talking about was saying that they were having a really big issue with that website developer and how they handled the entire thing. I'm almost positive it was Adamsville or Adamstown is the town that I'm talking about on the west side of Massachusetts. But I'm pretty sure it was Revise. That was their website.
Right.
Ryan, what's the schools use? What's the school using? What's the Algonquin website on?
It's Blackboard.
Blackboard.
Yeah, that's more of a school.
Yeah.
But I've got experience in Civic Plus, and I would agree with Jason's synopsis there. It's if you've got it, it's worth exploring what they can offer.
Ryan or Jason, do either of you know if Civic Plus offers professional services? Like if we wanted to, take some ARPA money and do a one-time, significant upgrade where customize it to Southborough's needs and make use of more modules, those type of things.
Yeah. So and that's something that I need to, communicate with the new account manager with. But as far as I know, yes, there is they have internal resources to kind of go through the process, see what our needs are, where, if our needs are not met currently, how do we get to those needs being met with the town and also with, with the employees as well.
Actually, a couple things. One, I signed up to try and get a quote on training for the Public Accessibility Committee on making, communications more accessible. And so I'll wait and see if I get a nibble on that. But the other thing was I saw this, and I'll send out a link later, but there's a webinar that they did on making efficient use of your ARPA funds. So I'll send that out. We can take a look and see what they recommend.
Civic Plus.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Really?
They have a whole bunch of webinars on how people, different towns are using their stuff. And this particular webinar was your effective use of your ARPA funds.
How to effectively use ARPA funds? Turn it over to Civic Plus.
Well, that's I think that's going to be any vendor, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, and William, to your point, that was part of the reason why I was reaching out to my account rep, was part of your committee that you're on.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, that was exactly the reasons why I was trying to get in touch with a rep, talk about those changes and also other modules.
Well, if we could do something for $22,499 before the end of June, that would be a big help, because they're not going to let us, conclude a contract, but schedule the training past June. So we got some money burning a hole in our pocket right now. Which actually, that's another thing, the accessibility. If there's any accessibility twist that we can put on things before June 30th, by all means, let me know. I'm sure Bonnie Vaniff would like to spend that rather than lose it.
Well, I do think that revising town website for accessibility, that's definitely something important. Okay, I know Mr. Litt, we probably should move on the agenda, but Mr. Litt has a comment on the subject. Go ahead, Mr. Litt.
Yeah, as I said, last time Angela's right, that I think it's important to understand, what we have. I've run into glitches with Civic Plus, even, from the outside. But as everyone who's looked into it has said, it's there. And I don't think that anyone currently in town has taken the full training on, what it can do, even for the modules, that we have. The other thing is, when you look at what's under the hood, I mean, the website on the surface doesn't look like it's all that sophisticated, but behind the scenes, there's an awful lot of stuff. And just as a crude benchmark, I have to go out of town shortly, and I was making reservations. So I looked at a reservation site, and they're very proud that they've got a new website program going. And what it does is, it makes ferry reservations. It lets you sign up for when you want it, and how big your car is, and they pack the stuff on and they sell tickets, and it's kind of, I think it's less complicated than the stuff we have to deal with in town. But it's a 38-week project for about 10 people. And while I don't have the exact quote, I did a thumb in the air kind of estimate. And, I come up with, if you assume cheap people and you assume not terribly much profit and all of that, they've got to be spending, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. So, I mean, I think we ought to be thinking about, how do we maximize what we have? Clearly, the look and feel is horrible. Clearly, there are accessibility issues. And clearly, there are opportunities to pull in the independent things we have, the library and rec certainly, come to mind. But, starting from scratch, I don't think it's going to happen for $50,000 or $80,000. And I don't think it's a good use of resources from what I know at this point.
Yeah.
And if Jay wants to take me behind the scenes to look at it even more, I don't think my opinion is going to change, but it might become even more emphatic.
Yeah. The only reason I would think we should, if we're going to be investing money, we just need to do due diligence and make sure that this is the thing we should be moving forward. And it sounds like Jay's already done some of that, which is wonderful. So thank you, Jay, for that work. And completely agreed that, I mean, anything custom, it's not just a one-time fee, it's ongoing. So we should avoid a high custom website. All right, before we move off this topic, I know Mr. Stivers, who's on the select board, probably has the best understanding of where ARPA is on with respect to the select board and ARPA proposals. So, Mr. Stivers, do you have could you mind bringing us up to date on that?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. We got the report, which I believe is the final report from the ARPA committee. And we are on this coming Tuesday on the agenda is to talk about what we're going to do for next steps there. And my hope is that we'll be able to find a number of things on there that the recommendations that we can agree that are appropriate to get started with quickly, because we've got some pending projects. For example, the senior center construction project has been on the pipeline for a long time, and I think there's a lot of support for it. So that's one potential thing that we can move quickly with. And there may be a few others. And for example, if there are pieces of the recommendation for technology, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's $300,000 in there for technology that would be helpful to understand. Are there pieces that are important to spend sooner rather than later, or can we wait on some of that, the useful input? But we're, I think, headed toward a conversation to sort out what the next steps are, and we can spend that, we can allocate through the end of 24, and we can spend through the end of 26. So it's not immediate pressure to do that, but if things are time sensitive, for example, there's a case, Northborough Road culvert thing sort of got exciting at town meeting, and there's a lot of pressure to do that. So I think we'll be talking about, are there ways that we can keep that moving as well? So again, Tuesday conversation, no guarantee of anything at this point, but I think there are a lot of push to do what makes sense in terms of near term versus longer term spending.
Is that report public on
Sure.
the town website?
That was on the select board package for the meeting package last meeting, whatever, 2 weeks ago, almost now, a week and a half ago. So it was in the package there.
Thank you.
There was actually an addendum to the package. So depending on what where you look, but I think it was in the final package. If it was not there, you can shoot an email to Melanie Otsuko, who is our admin person who manages that. She can get it for you.
Okay.
Great job the committee did. A lot of competing interests, very tight timeline. And as usual, anything you recommend is going to make some people unhappy, but I think it was a very thorough job. And in large part, the survey that you guys supported was hugely helpful there, because that allowed them to get sort of validation, if you will, of public sentiment on many things. So thank you again for the support for that. That was, I think, a critical part of the process.
Okay, thank you for that update, Mr. Stivers. All right, any other thoughts or comments on ARPA? Sounds like we're in a waiting pattern, but it sounds like it's a wonderful thing that seems like there's budget that's been allocated.
Matt, I do think we could maybe start some of the interviews. I mean, it might be, while we're waiting for Jason to get the account manager, we might be able to start with some of the resident interviews and touching base with some of the department heads and the other boards and committees. I don't think we have to talk to every single person, but maybe just a sampling, so we can start pulling some of the high level requirements together. That might be a productive step while we're waiting on some of this other stuff to unfold.
Yeah.
I understand that, but on the other hand, I kind of have always liked the drunk under the streetlight approach, which is that
Not familiar with that.
Neither am I.
Well,
a
guy comes up on a drunk who's frantically searching around under a streetlight, and the guy asks him, "Well, why, what you looking for?" And the guy says, "I'm looking for a buck, a coin I dropped." And so the guy gets down and helping the drunk to try and find the money, and finally, they don't find it. Finally, the guy says, "Well, where did you drop it?" And the guy said, "Well, I dropped it way over there in the dark, but the light's a lot better here." So I guess what I'm saying is that rather than maybe having a completely open-ended, what would you like kind of thing, that maybe it would be useful to at least have a starting palette, and that might be the things that we don't use in Civic Plus today, and say, try and figure out what people, if those kinds of things would satisfy what people are looking for, because that certainly would be a much more economical approach in the implementation. My concern would be that we could get people very excited about functionality that A, may not really be all that useful, and B, could be very, very difficult to acquire.
I am a technologist at heart. I love technology. I'm passionate about technology, but we have to start with the problem, the business problem we're trying to solve. And technology, just to shoehorn technology, I'm passionate about this. To push technology and to solve the problem without first understanding what the problem is, I strongly think we need to start with what the problem is. I agree with that. Civic Plus, but I think if anything, what this will do is highlight, understand where we want to go. What's the Civic Plus can offer? Obviously, hopefully there's not too much, delta between those two. But if there is a delta, I'd love to take that back and provide as feedback back to Civic Plus, saying, "Hey, look, our needs are this. Would you please add it in the future?"
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that they have the best implementation, but maybe one place that we could agree is that Civic Plus tries to meet the needs of municipalities, and so just looking at the areas where they are trying to meet needs might be a good point for defining the business problem, right? At least it says, hey, here are a lot of the business problems that other municipalities are finding. And if we're not solving that issue now, then we should be looking around, right?
Yeah, totally agreed. Yeah, I like that. So I think it's a mixture of trying to understand what their needs are, and also bring them plate. Here's the related functionality that Civic Plus can bring to the table. Well, would that be interesting to them? So yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Angela, any other thoughts on that?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll work with you, Angela, to reach out and Could do, sort of
Oh, I'm
conflict.
sorry, Matt. Maybe one more quick question for Mr. Stivers. Do we need to send a representative to the select board on Tuesday to talk about the projects, or has ARPA already covered all of that and you have all that information?
I don't have a clear answer for that. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea for somebody to be in the audience there to raise a hand if there's a question about it or whatever. But I mean, the ARPA report went into some detail, but clearly not the level of detail that you folks understand relative to those expenditures. And if you had any recommendations in terms of, here's a piece of it that we need to do immediately that needs some money, that might not be a bad piece of data to have. And that's one of the questions, as I mentioned previously here, that I'm interested in understanding better. And I don't have a clear picture of that. I actually was going to go back and look through the report again from the committee, see if I could drill in and figure out, of the 300K, what do you need soon rather than later. It was for things like website and web updates and so forth. But we didn't see an implementation plan for any of that, which I don't know if one exists or not, but it would be useful to know, here's 3 things that we need to do in the next 6 months to make some of the rest of this stuff happens. Or if it's longer term stuff than that, then we'll talk about it later.
I think, Sam, that we're more at sort of the requirements and the problem definition phase right now.
That's what I'm hearing.
And and it may well be that there is, that we could bring in somebody in to help with that. That wouldn't be bad. But I'm not sure that we're shovel ready quite yet.
Yeah.
Remind me of the ARPA projects, the exterior external Wi-Fi at Department of Public Works, was that part of ARPA or is that part of your Jay's your
It was
your
submitted
budget?
to ARPA.
ARPA. Okay. So that to me is pretty much shovel ready. Is that right, Jay? I mean, do we spec'd out equipment or not? Not yet.
I haven't had a chance to spec out any equipment technically.
Okay.
I just know that there are needs. There are definitely needs within DPW and other locations that Wi-Fi definitely needs to be enhanced. Have I done the spec work? Not necessarily. Probably about 6 months ago, I had a brief conversation with CDW and Meraki about my intentions and what I'd like to do, and kind of gave me some options. But I haven't, it obviously gets lost in between that time.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Sounds good. Let's move on. Standardized technology vendor question lists. Is that something you also want to cover, Angela?
Yeah. I think everybody has this document. I can screen share if you want to give me the permission.
Let's see. I think, Jay, you need to give her permission. There we go. You should be able to share now.
Thank you. Let's not check the wrong thing. Hang on a second. I just need to close a couple things before I can share.
Angela, while you're doing that, this is Sam. Another comment about the ARPA money. I may be speaking out of school here, but I think the faster you folks actually have a specific plan in place and get a specific proposal in for that money, the less risk you have for somebody else coming along and finding another use for that down the road that creates higher priority. So I have no expectation that will happen. On the other hand, if there's money there are often people who have good proposals for using it. So, not that you want to spend anything that you shouldn't be spending, but if you're organized and ready with the specific proposal, I think that puts you in stronger position there. So.
I think for us, it was a little bit of the chicken and the egg. It was, how much time do we spend on it if we don't know if it's going to get funded? And
right.
So we can definitely do more of the legwork if we believe that those are ready to go. Okay. I think
Please don't quote me on that, but I support what you guys are doing.
So we haven't looked at this for quite a while, but essentially this idea came up 6 months ago or something, where we were seeing a lot of different departments around town essentially buying their own software. And so we had the discussion at the time, could we establish some type of guidance for different groups, departments that might be looking at software about the types of questions that we as technologists usually think about and evaluate when we're purchasing software. I think everybody contributed different questions to this, and we basically just combined all of that into a software vendor assessment question list. And we start with asking, basic questions about the company. Are they a startup? Are they well established? We go down into the product specific questions, and then on to questions about specific data components, security, performance, and services implementation support, maintenance and training, contracts, cost, and that's the last category. I think the next steps in terms of where we go with this are, there's two things that stuck out to me. One is, I think there's probably some level of redundancy in the questions. I think everybody was asking some similar questions in the same way. So going back and doing a final pass that just streamlines it is probably necessary. And if we are intending to give this to people who aren't as familiar with technology, putting it in a more user-friendly format, and maybe restating some of the questions so they don't come across as technical, but where someone still might be able to use it to evaluate some of the basic questions before bringing it to somebody like Jason, is probably the next level to get it into a format that we could then distribute it.
Angela, could I ask a question about the purpose of this, just so I fully understand? I know the high level purpose. Is the goal, this is clearly a great tool we're putting together. Is the goal here for this be a tool to be used by a individual department as they approach vendors? Or is it a tool basically where the department head or somebody within a department would be the one asking the questions and then filling the responses out? Or is this meant to be that the department, somebody in the department would send the whole questionnaire list onto the vendor, and it'd be incumbent on the vendor to fill out the responses and pass it back? So whose job will be to actually interpret the questions and fill it out?
I think when we initially discussed it, we wanted to give some guidance to the local town departments so that as they were looking at different software and different providers, we could at least give them, here's the top 10 technical questions that you should be asking the vendor, just as a basic evaluation before it goes any further. I do think they could take it and send it to the vendor, have the vendor send it in, and maybe it would save Jason some legwork so that he doesn't have to ask every one of these questions every time. And he can, essentially ask the groups to do a little bit of that on, his behalf by getting this filled out in advance so that we have it. I think those are the two main use cases that we discussed when we initiated it.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I love your ideas for next steps on this.
And if people have a chance to go back through it, and if you have any further suggestions, certainly let me know. But hopefully we can get it tied up in the next few weeks and then be done with it.
Sounds great. Any other comments from anybody on this? Looks like we have a comment from Mr. Litt. Go ahead, Mr. Litt.
Yeah, I think this started sort of around the ClearGov time. And I can see some of the stuff came from an email that I sent. And I think what I want to remind you is that one of the things in the MTC's wheelhouse is reviewing plans for adopting technology. And so at that point, I thought, and I think the others the people on the committee also thought that it would be good to have a standardized way for the MTC to be looking at proposed software acquisitions. So in terms of, who fills it out, I'm not sure there's a single answer, but I think the MTC needs to have answers to all or most of these in terms of being able to make its recommendation. And, these are a wide variety of things, from the very, general top level stuff to some really gory details. And, I think we probably ought to think about, well, what's the timeline? When do you ask which question? How do you do this in a way that, you're not, putting up a wall, but you're getting the answers. So, I mean, I don't think anyone, is going to worry about, escrow terms until you've decided that functionally you've got something that might be worth looking into. So, I mean, I think it needs a little bit more thought in terms of phasing, and then in terms of adding some definitions. And as usual, Angela, if you want to send me something, I'll be happy to give you my 5 cents worth, which you
That'd
can
be great.
discount down to something more reasonable.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let me do another pass at it, and then I'll circulate it again and get more feedback, and then we can bring it back into another meeting later on.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Let's see here. Next on the agenda, town digital content accessibility. So I know that, Will, you were going to be working on potentially a proposal with the accessibility committee on basically standards.
Well, it's looking like standards, but also some other people, including Tim and some of the people on the accessibility committee, and also Mark Purple, thought that getting some train the trainer going would be very good. So the idea there would be that to bring somebody in who can train, let's say, someone from different departments, and who can then turn around and perhaps train people from committees as to, what tools they should use and what things that they should be looking out for when they are creating documents to go out, or electronic communications. So over the last few days, Tim, for instance, brought up the point that the mighty tree committee, their communications are not necessarily very accessible because of the way that they're put together. So, those are the kinds of things that would like to cover with this. And, I think the train the trainer idea is very good. And that's why I'm sort of frantically looking around and seeing if we can somehow spend some of that sweet 2021, 2022 money before it runs out.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other comments on accessibility? So, I mean, just to sort of play that back to you, Will, from my understanding of what you just said, our goal is to start with what training might be available from something like Civic Plus, and use that as the baseline. Is that right?
Well, that would be one thing. I mean, but there are other training, there are other trainers out there, and actually, Mark Purple's been tasked to see if he has any or can come up with anybody. So I think that's very good. The other would just be, trying to put together some, what are the major issues that we are currently having, and then the last point would be, and working with Jay in terms of putting together some type of email form where people could highlight, hey, here's something that I'm finding, or it's not accessible, and could you somehow resolve this? I mean, Tim, he knows who to call and contact, but other people out there who may run into things that Tim doesn't run into don't really have his knowledge as to how to get it recognized.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's move on to town technology status updates, basically town tech manager updates. Turn over to you, Jay.
Yeah, so let's see, where do we start? It's been an interesting couple of months. As we all know, I have once again lost another player to my team. We recently lost the person who was appointed, went to the appointment, did a background check, signed the appointment letter, and then emailed us about 10 days prior saying that he was offered something else internally and wants to stay at where he was currently. So we had to come up with a different plan. Just so you know, during this 5 or 6 months that we have been searching, we have done everything that we could possibly do to get this thing out there, between LinkedIn, any type of vendor that that we could use for job listing posting, even to I'm trying to think of the vendor. It was a technology vendor that mainly specified in just technology jobs that we posted out there as well. And we did have a lot of people come in and get a lot of interviews, but a lot of people just didn't meet that cut. And the ones that we did have, in that time, we've had 5 that we were close to bringing in, and something has fallen apart in between that time. So we have come up with some ideas internally that we've discussed, and so we're taking a different. We had about 3 options that we could use. One is the first option that I'm presenting to you guys tonight, that I would hope that I get support from all of you. It's definitely an out of the box solution, but I did have somebody that I had worked with in the past that I felt comfortable and knowing that he has over 20 years experience in customer service and is changing his career into IT and is pursuing a certification in IT. So we were looking to get this person on board with obviously a 6-month probationary period, where if they don't either A, they're not working out, or B, getting their their certifications that they need to do, then we have to part ways. But I'm very confident in this level of of the ability of the person to get the job done, to get the work that Matt and I recently had a conversation about. He sees all the laptops and desktops I have sitting in my office that I cannot get out the door. So there's a lot of work that I know and I can trust that this person will get the job done, especially in the first month or 2. And it is definitely an unorthodox, solution to a problem, but I have tried so many different other options and have tried so many different things. I've been let down too many times in the last 6 months that it's really starting to, just some of the conversations we're having today, looking at website developers, Wi-Fi. These are the projects that I really want to start focusing on, and I don't have that ability. So we're looking to do this option right now, and I honestly have a lot of confidence in this option. I wouldn't have presented it if I didn't think I had the confidence in it. And that's the honest truth. I just, I have a lot of confidence in the ability of the person to get the job done and get the certifications that they need to get to where they need to be. Also, I feel that not only that, it would be a great growing experience. I love to mentor and I love to, teach people. So it'd be a great experience for us to mesh together and have outside ideas and collaborate over the next few years and grow that position into what it should be. So that's where we're at right now currently. And I any feedback or thoughts on that from the MTC, I would definitely appreciate that. Just to give you a little bit of feedback on the other 2 options we were thinking was, if this doesn't work out, then it would be, going with a temp agency and spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a person that we don't know is going to be a good fit. And then we'll end up losing it and going back to square one again, or hiring an MSP, which doesn't help me at all. It just gives me that umbrella of, taking care of the higher level items. But then I'm still that, person that's firsthand and taking care of issues daily. So that's where we're at right now. Again, any feedback, and I would definitely like the support of the MTC on getting this forward. Questions or concerns?
And this person has agreed, Jay? They said that they would take the position and they're committed to doing it?
Yes, absolutely. They are definitely committed to doing it. Matter of fact, since those conversations have happened, they've had interviews with both Vanessa and Brian internally. They agreed upon it as well, just by having a good conversation with them. This person has already gone out and has made steps in purchasing, not only books, but modules and testing. And he was already in that path of looking at this as well. But now he's really taken the step forward is getting into this. So he's definitely excited if we can get to that point of getting there to do this. He's definitely on board with, he's also on board with the fact that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? And we have to part ways and we have to do a different option. Maybe in 6 months, again, I have confidence in this, but in 6 months, maybe the market might be different, that we would find someone if this did not, come to
it's not ideally what we wanted from the beginning, but I think
Exactly.
we've tested the market. There don't seem to be a lot of equivalent skilled people out there. So going with someone that we can train and that we can, bring along, feels like the right solution to me.
Yep, fully agreed. And so, Jay, I want to thank you for all of the effort you've put into trying to find sort of the ideal person. I know it's been a long journey, up and down, sort of emotional roller coaster. So thank you. And fully agreed with Angela saying ideally, we're hoping to find a early career IT person as opposed to an entry level. But clearly you have so much on your plate, and this is probably a good option. Yeah, a great option to pursue. Basically, entry level, especially. It's all about trust, right? And if you previously have experience working with this person, their work ethic, that's more important in many cases than actual skills, like the actual technical. That's the ability to learn, the ability to show up and perform a job. That is so much more valuable. So I'm personally very, very supportive of this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Will, any comments from you? Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah. Full support of the MTC, Jay, and good luck with this. We're looking forward to meeting the person. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And thread the loop here and get the person appointed. And we're here to support as much as we can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I know, but for everybody's information, Mr. Provost has recently came down, I think, with COVID. He's not going to be able to join us tonight. And he and I and Jay are discussing reviewing the network config as well as security. We're not going to discuss much in that our meeting, just more informational there. Mr. Provo had also requested several items on the agenda to discuss municipal tech for supporting electrical vehicles. I'd be interested in knowing what he was thinking about that, because to me, that's mostly a private infrastructure, apart from maybe electric charging at the townhouse or the public safety building. By the way, do we have any electric chargers at public safety? It's such a new building. You'd hope that they have something, but probably not.
Now, you're talking for vehicles, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they have.
All right. Well, hopefully we have maybe conduit in the ground. That would
I'm sure they have plenty of conduit in the ground for other things that they run there. So
yeah. All right. And then he also requested adding the agenda cell coverage holes in town and digital access options for the transfer station.
I want to talk about the cell phone holes as well when we have Joe back. Yeah, that was
I'm wondering
part of the survey.
We could delay the discussion of those until Joe can be back. So with that being said, I don't have anything else for on the agenda tonight. Did I miss anything? Any comments on the existing agenda items? If not, we can end early. Before we end, let's go ahead and take a few minutes to find a suitable time. I know, of course, with Larry not being here and Joe not being here, there may be a chance we might have to revise, but hopefully we can find, let's find a date that works for everybody on the call right now, and so forth. I'm going to make a proposal, and let's see if we want to shoot it down. The 21st, the Tuesday, 21st of June from 7 to 9 p.m. How would that work on everybody's schedule?
What was that date again? June what?
June 21st.
We have a lot of Juneteenth programming on that day at work, so I'm going to have to be in Boston all that day. I would prefer if we could do the 28th or the 14th, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, let's see here.
June 14th, you said?
Or the 28th.
I could most likely make either one of those. The 21st might be tougher for me, but either one of those other dates should be okay.
Okay. Yeah, how's the 28th then for everybody? Like works for Jay, Angela, Will.
Yes.
Okay. Ryan, do you be able to join us? I think that's a yes. Okay. All right. I'll put a calendar hold for the 28th from 7 to 9 p.m. And I'll also touch base with Joe and Larry, see if they're able to join us, and hopefully they are, fingers crossed. But once
you
again,
need to go
Ryan,
back to the 21st. I mean, I can make that one work. It's just a little bit more difficult.
if I could, also Jay is probably be not necessarily the best for Jay as well. So okay. So maybe we'll do a fallback on the 14th.
Okay.
But let's hope the 28th works.
Angela, what does Juneteenth programming look like?
Our firm does a bunch of like panelists and speakers and all kinds of things, but we have to be in the office to attend.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, is this related to some type of event, historical event?
Juneteenth is now a federal holiday.
Oh, okay.
And so at my company, we do a lot of programming around it that, we have Black-owned businesses come in. We do a lot of celebrations around that. We have panel discussions, diversity discussions. So it's along those lines.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, welcome, Ryan. It's wonderful to have you. Looking forward to collaborating with you these meetings. And I'll add for, like I say, for future agenda meetings, I'd love to get to hear what's going on in the schools, sort of updates, and about both short-term as well as long-term strategy, technology strategy for the schools. And love to think about how we might be able to assist and once again, ideally find synergies between the town, inclusive of connectivity, because we have some fiber that goes right by some of the schools. And right now we're looking, I know Jay's in the long backlog of things that Jay's be looking at is looking at improving connectivity in terms of redundancy and speed and all that stuff. So it's a good time to chat.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it. So I get us marked down on the 28th or the 14th as a backup. You'll see me then.
Great. Okay. I move then that we adjourn. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay.
Welcome.
Let's go around the room. Will?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And likewise, aye.
And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, you all too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.